The greater number of on-time payments that you accumulate, the more seasoned your credit profile is considered, right? And we'll get more specific with that. These timely payments form what's the basis of your borrowing power. You guys, throughout this presentation, you guys will hear me say borrowing power a lot, right? And borrowing power just means your ability to borrow. And at what terms are you able to borrow at, right? Lenders utilize this term frequently, and it just means how risky do they assume you are based on your credit profile, right? What history or what borrowing abilities or debt management skills does your credit profile speak to based on the history of your accounts? Okay, so in other words, your borrowing power does not align just with your credit score. It does not necessarily align with your credit score, right? There are so many individuals who have a high credit score, good credit, or vice versa, and their borrowing power may not match their credit score, right? Because contrary to popular belief, your credit score and your credit profile are two totally separate things, right? And then another thing on top of that, lenders are not as concerned with your credit score as we are as consumers. Like we're more concerned with our credit scores. Excuse me, guys. We're more concerned with our credit scores than lenders are, right? So when you are filling out a credit application, your credit score is not the determining factor on if you will be approved for said card or car or home, right? It has a little to do with it. However, it's never going to be the deciding factor. It's always going to be your credit profile, right? And that just means what makes up the last 7 years of how you've behaved in your credit, right? What does that speak to? The history on all of your accounts and all of that, right? Now, the total number of late payments on each of your accounts, as well as the ratio of accounts with late payments to those without, both influence your how many points you're actually getting of those 192.5. And in other words, to make it very simple, not only are you judged by how many on-time payments that you have versus missed payments, but another factor that goes into determining how many of those points that you're getting is how many accounts that you have that has never had a late payment. So let's just say you have 5 accounts on your credit report, and then 3 of them you've been late within the last 7 years. You would only have 2 accounts with 100% positive payment history for 7 years, right? So in other words, if you want to obtain as much of these points as possible, or hopefully every single one of them, you would not only have to have no late payments for the last 7 years, right? But you can't even have like derogatory accounts, collections or charge-offs and all of that, right? Now, just to relieve you guys a little bit, you are not expected to have a perfect credit score. In fact, only 1% of the population has a perfect credit score of an 850. So you don't actually have to strive for a perfect credit score in order to have substantial borrowing power, right? And that's what I wanted to talk about today. Just little things that you can do, that you can change starting today, that'll impact your borrowing power in a positive way, okay? Now, other factors that goes into determining how many points you're getting is the time since your last missed payment, the degree of lateness. So obviously you can be 30 days late, 60 days late, 90 days late, up to 120 days late, right? The type of account that you have a late payment on. There is a hierarchy to late payments, right? A hierarchy in the sense that, for example, mortgage accounts, late payments on mortgage accounts are considered the worst type of late payment. So if you have a mortgage and you have a late payment, that's going to weigh more heavily in a negative way on your borrowing power and your credit score than if you were late on, let's say, a credit card, right? So the hierarchy is mortgage accounts, those are the top dog, auto loans, revolving accounts, which are credit cards, and then retail accounts. So those are going to be like your furniture accounts. If you have a retail credit card or something like that, those are like considered, low level accounts. Therefore, their late payments, of course, still does affect you, but it impacts you less than the other account types. Okay. Again, how many one-time payments you add to your payment bank will speak more to your borrowing power. So the more on-time payments that you have, the better your credit profile is, right? Here's the tip. The top 1% of borrowers, 1%, meaning like obviously they get the top offers. The top 1% of borrowers have successfully made more than 500 on-time payments on their credit profile, right? Remember that 500 number, because just a little tidbit trick between me and you, the second that your credit profile records 500, at least 500 payments within the last 7 years, you immediately, your credit profile gets taken up to the top threshold. The contingency, like I want to say, the contingency is if you like, this does not work if you've had a collection within the last 24 months. Okay. Now, if you have had a collection within the last 24 months, your credit profile will still be ranked higher than what it would have before you had 500 payments. But if you don't have a collection within the last 24 months, that is a sort of like cheat code, right? It's a cheat code in order to take your credit profile to what's probably a lower level based on whatever your credit profile looks like, immediately to the top, ranked amongst the top borrowers, right? And there are tiers when it comes to borrowing power, right? Like two people can apply for the same application. They can even have identical credit scores, but they're not going to have the same borrowing power, right? Like one may get approved for $1,000, one may get approved for $500, and how much you're approved for is determined off certain things that you have shown on your credit profile. And in this example, the goal should always be at least 500 payments within the last 7 years, right? And that sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot, because I already done it. I did the calculation for you. All you have to do is have 6 accounts, which will record 72 payments per year towards your payment history for 7 years. So if you maintain at least 6 accounts, and if you have student loans, like this is very easy to do. If you maintain at least 6 accounts for, over the course of 7 years, then you'll get your 500 payments. Now, obviously, if you have more accounts than that, then you'll reach it faster, right? But that's one of the for sure ways to ensure that you are getting, depending on the rest of your profile, most, if not all, of those 192.5 points, right? So that's sort of a way to make your credit profile resilient, right? Like if you are getting most of those points or all of those points, things are not going to impact you as much as they would impact someone else that's not getting all of the payment history points, because it is the largest factor of your credit score and it lends more than any other category, right? So remember that 500 payments will automatically make your credit profile considered experienced. Automatically. It's not an opinion thing. It's statistically, if you have 500 one-time payments, obviously not late payments, so 500 one-time payments recorded, which again, in the last 7 years, your credit profile will automatically be considered experienced, okay? And make sure they're on primary accounts. So if it's an authorized user account, they don't impact your borrowing power the same. So make sure you are doing these with primary accounts, okay?